it wasn't long after you left Satin Whale, or that Satin Whale dissolved, that it was your earlier work with Triumvirate which led you to working with a certain Mr. Michael Oldfield.
Well, yeah, that's another weird story. You know, it's amazing in your career, Joe, as you say, I've been knocking around for quite a few years now, how the nothing planned. I never had a plan. Perhaps I should have. Maybe I'd have done a little bit better if I'd had a plan, but I never had a plan. But something always happened. And with Triumvirate, as you say, Triumvirate, then Satin Whale, then a kind of a bit of a quiet period. I was still living in the North Yorkshire. I was writing songs, and I'd written an album and was in the process of booking studios to record it. And I did have a record deal with this a London company, a smallish company. Triumvirate had been managed in the early days by a guy called Dirk Homeyer. Now, Dirk Homeyer later became the number 2 guy of Virgin in Germany. And so Dirk was heavily involved with Mike Oldfield's sales in Germany, which I think you know was Mike's biggest market, yeah. I think, over the years, has been Germany. And Dirk Homeyer was very close to Mike, and when Mike was touring before Crisis, and I can't remember what the tour was, I had no really knowledge of Mike Oldfield beyond Tubular Bells at that point. But what happened was they had some kind of dinner party, and Dirk played a Triumvirate album while they were all eating. And after a while, Mike said to Dirk, who's this singing? And Dirk said, oh, it's a friend of mine, said it was me. And Mike said, I never heard of him. He said, well, he's in this group Triumvirate, was in the group Triumvirate. And Mike said, is he German? And Dirk said, no, he's actually English, lives in England. And Mike made some nice comments about the singing. And he said, I'd really like to record that voice, words to that effect. And so Dirk said, well, I haven't spoken to him for a couple of years, but I know he lives in north of England somewhere. And then Mike went back, and at some point I got a phone call. It was on a Saturday morning, I remember. And the guy I mentioned earlier, Pete Jackson, the drummer in Brave New World, Pete and I were writing together, trying to write my solo album. And Pete was a prankster, you know. Pete would often phone me, what are you wearing? or something more bizarre, you know, this is the police, you know, we've got you surrounded. Why don't you come out with your hands up? It's ridiculous, stupid jokes, but they made me laugh. And he had this ability to put on weird voices and make up stupid stories. So I picked up the phone one Saturday morning, and this voice said, bear in mind, all I knew about Mike Oldfield at that point was Tubular Bells. Literally, that's all I knew. And I probably would have recognized him, maybe, but he wasn't that, you know, prolific in terms of, you know, hit singles or being on the TV. I think I might have recognized him. Let's say that, but I certainly wouldn't recognize his speaking voice. So this guy picked up the phone, and I picked up the phone, and this voice said, is that Barry Palmer? And I went, yeah. He said, it's Mike Oldfield here. And I said, oh, come on, Pete. You can do better than that. And Oldfield said, no, it's not Pete, it's Mike Oldfield. And I said, all right, Pete, this is pathetic, you know. I didn't even get the joke. I thought, if this is the best Pete could do. And he said, no, it really is Mike Oldfield. And I realized he was getting a bit irate. And I realized it wasn't Pete's voice pretending to be some random, you know, musician. So I said, what, Mike Oldfield? Really? He said, yes, I've been trying to contact you. He said, so when I established it was Mike Oldfield, I blurted out, you know, Mike Oldfield, Tubular Bells. And he said, well, you're getting more irate now. You know, he said, well, I've done a lot more than just Tubular Bells. That's not the only thing I've done. And I said, oh, sorry. I said, well, what can I do for you? You know, he said, well, I want you to come and audition. And I said, what for? He said, well, I'd like you to come to London. He said, I've got a studio, and I'd like you to come and want to see if we can do something together. I like your voice, or something along those lines. And I said, okay. when were you thinking of? And he said, tomorrow. I'll book you a flight. I was living in near Whitby in North Yorkshire. He said, Sunday, he said, tomorrow I've got the band coming in to play. He said, I'd like to try you out. And I said, look, I'm really sorry, Mike. I don't know any of your songs. I think Moonlight Shadow was a bit later. I'm pretty sure I didn't know a single song off the top of my head, Joe. I might have, if you'd have jolted me, I might have remembered one or two. But off the top of my head, he's asking me to come and audition. And I thought, well, I won't know what to sing. He said, no, just come. I'll book you a flight from Teesside Airport and to Heathrow Airport, and I'll get someone to come and pick you up. So he did that. I took the flight, and he picked me up in his black Porsche.
Nice.
He parked outside in an illegal parking space and got away with it. And came in, and we got out. We got in the car, and it's on the M40 or the M40. Yeah, the M40. Where he lived, that house, the Halings, or whatever it was called. And so we drove ridiculously fast in the Porsche. I felt like I was on a plane, actually, pushing me back against the seat, the speed. A bit of a show-off. And he stopped at a pub, and he said, fancy a drink? I don't drink in the day normally. It's about midday or something like that. And I said, okay. And we went in the pub, and within about half an hour, we both drunk 3 pints of Guinness. He really knocks them back, but I didn't want to be letting the side down, by being a wimp. So, and I do like a beer, so it wasn't really a problem. So we both arrived. He was completely sober. I was probably semi-drunk by then, and got into the room. There was drums, bass, guitars. There was a load of musicians. Phil Spaulding, I remember well, was there. They were, and he got me to try and sing, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And Phil was shouting in my ear what the song was and the melody, and I was trying to sing, and it was a bit of a muddle, really. But I managed to show him that I could do live. I think enough to convince him that it just wasn't like studio enhanced what he'd heard. I think that's what he was after. Yeah. What do you sound like live in a room? I think he wanted to know that. And so I got that. I passed the audition. Amazing.
It certainly sounds interesting. Put it that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, I knew he was a big superstar, and I'd never been anywhere near anyone like that before. It was. I wasn't in awe. I don't think I'm in awe of anyone, but I was sort of on my toes. I thought, blimey, if I'm going to sing with Mike Oldfield, that would be great. But I had no clue about what it meant musically. And the song that he was trying to sing was one of those, I can't remember what it's called now. It's the one without words. Yippee-yada-doo, yippee-yada-doo, obi-dobi, or what's it called? You must know it. Maggie sang it.
Yeah, it'll probably be Sheba to the tune.
That sounds like Sheba, yeah.
It's been Sheba, because I do know that apparently when Sheba was first written, it did have a proper lyric, and then he didn't like that lyric, and then it became like. Well,
at the point I was involved that Sunday afternoon, it didn't have a lyric then either. So maybe it had he wanted to hear the tuning, right. And it's a bit of a twisted melody. It's a bit odd. But anyway, I must have done okay, because he seemed to like it, and he seemed to like me. One of the things about Mike that you probably know, I met a guy who had worked with Mike before down here, a man called Phil Beer. And he's a local musician, and I went to see him at a gig, and by sheer coincidence, I didn't even know he was anything to do with Mike Oldfield. He started saying to me, I know you from somewhere, don't I? What have you, you're a singer, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, what have you done? I said, I used to sing with Mike Oldfield. He said, I used to work with Mike. And he said something to me that was very interesting. He said, did you notice that Mike hires people, and first of all, he wants them to be good at what they do. That's a priority. He said, but almost on an equal level, he needs to like you and get on with you. No matter how brilliant he thinks you are, if he doesn't like you or he doesn't feel comfortable with you, you won't get the job. And the reverse is true. When he stops feeling comfortable, or when he wants a new voice, or a new bass, or a new guitar, he kind of he rows back away from you, even though you could have been quite close and quite pally. And I didn't realise that probably did happen to me. It probably did happen, and I think it happens to more or less everyone. He doesn't seem able to finish with you and remain even friendly, let alone a friend. Sort of cuts you off completely. I kind of understand it, because I think he feels embarrassed. And if it was me, I wouldn't be embarrassed. I would just explain. I want to try something new, no offense. Thank you for everything you've done. Maybe one day we'll do something else, maybe not. But we can still have a beer together now and again if you like, that sort of thing. But I don't think he's comfortable with that. So I think once he's done with you, you're out of it. And when Phil Beer was telling me that, it was quite clear that that's his way of dealing with things. It's not a criticism, by the way. It's just an observation that that's the kind of personality that he has.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. I don't lie in bed grinding my teeth that Mike's not my friend anymore. I had a great time doing the tour and doing the album and all that. But sorry, what was your question? I'm sure I've veered off.
To be honest, and probably one or two more that I was going to be asking you later. But that's okay. I tell you, we've been talking a lot about Mike and when you came in for that. So let's have a listen to some of the tracks from Discovery.
Oh, okay.
Have a listen to Poison Arrows and Tricks of the Light.